2 drummers got killed.
Yeah, avalanche of snare drums.
Hey, thanks for taking the time.
Absolute pleasure. No, it's been great. It's been great to hang out, and it's been really good fun.
So awesome to be back again. And
I can't believe it's been a year though. It's been it's gone really quickly. Gone really, really quick.
I actually cannot really remember how I found you, but I somehow did, probably via the internet.
I think so. Yeah, I think you sent me. I certainly sent an email through the website to begin with. I think, and said about coming over, making the trip over, and
cool. So glad I did, because it's absolutely fantastic to sit.
And you came back.
Yeah, I did. So you did something right last
must
time.
have done. It must have been the sandwiches.
Yeah, probably. How did all this start?
I was working in a drum shop. I was working in a local drum store. I was still at music college. Loved interacting with people. Loved talking drums. You know, anyone that came in the drum shop, it was a cup of tea first, and then talk about drums. And then if they bought something, great. If they didn't worry me. Always been into vintage drums. Studied jazz at music college. Really loved that side of things.
Yeah.
And one of my best friends growing up at school had moved out to Jacksonville to work with the church. So he's a drummer, playing, recording stuff out there, and he kept saying about all these amazing drums, all this sort of stuff that was around.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, let's have a go. Let's buy a few vintage drums. Let's bring some fresh stuff to the UK. I was fed up of seeing the same half dozen drums being moved around from one person to the next. So, you know, you knew who had owned this before and why they'd changed this and what had been done on it and how much they'd paid. The idea of bringing fresh stock in, so it's brand new. You know, it's an 80-year-old drum kit, but it's brand new to you, and no one else has owned it before you in Europe. That, you know, you're not going to turn up on a gig and go, oh, that used to be John's kit. I remember when he drilled a hole there or he dropped that. So it's just that idea of bringing fresh stuff to the UK. I luckily managed to find a company that we could ship with, and we could bring it in a cost-effective way, and it's just all grown from there, really. That's how I got started, and I think the first thing we did, bought in, I think it was about 6 kits, maybe 10 snare drums in our first shipment, just testing the water, seeing what would happen. Started up a Facebook page, started a group page on there, and I think 4 kits sold before they even landed in the UK.
Okay.
So I kind of went, onto something here, and just it snowballed from there. Every penny I've made, I've reinvested in buying more and more stock, and just having a choice. The idea of, you know, if you're interested in a 1940s Radio King kit, there's usually a couple on the website. There's usually a choice of a couple of snares. If you're after acrylites, there's usually 15 or 20. If you're after a 400, there's usually about the same.
I don't know any other store that has this kind of a massive collection of all.
So it's that whole thing. People say to me, "What about having a high street shop? What about having a nice glossy place to do it rather than like a studio setup?" But the studio setup is so cost effective in that I can then have more stock. I don't have to pay to switch the lights on. I'm not nervous about who's going to walk through the shop door, because it's done by appointment. It's a little bit more of a special thing for the customer as well. You know, guys like you can travel across Europe, get on the Eurostar and have an afternoon just drinking tea, eating cake and hitting drums.
Yeah, that's the cool thing about it, actually.
And it's a more personal service as well. And we get time to interact and talk about stuff, make sure things are 100% right, like with the first kit. You know, we tried a couple of kits out, worked out the shipping costs, got the right drums to you at the right price, and it kind of works, doesn't it?
It does.
It's fun. I love it. There's not a day where I work because I'm talking about drums with people that love drums as much as I do. So it's good fun.
Awesome. So you got most of the drums that you import from America.
Yeah.
You've got your dealers there, or people you work with?
I've got a team of guys. Yeah, I'm very lucky. My original business partner ended up moving to Australia, and just at the point he did, I'd taken on the CNC drum, so I was dealing with the guys down in Kansas with that.
Yeah.
One of the guys working there just wanted to get involved in the vintage side of things, so he's now my main business partner. He sources so many of these incredible drums for me, but he's also got a team of guys. There's a couple of guys in Texas, a couple of guys up in New England. There's a guy down in Florida itself where we ship from. And they all just contact me, you know, 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, my phone's going crazy every night with people going, oh, do you want to buy this? Or do you fancy this? Or got this coming in, do you want to buy it? And most of the time, I just say yes. Because you don't get a second chance. If someone offers you a 1964, whatever it is, I'm not brave enough to say, no, I won't have that one because I've already got one. I'll wait for the next one, because you never know when the next one's going to turn up. There's only a finite amount of this stuff that was made. It seems like there's loads, but it's buying the right stuff at the right time and just making sure you've got a selection for people, really. Okay, sometimes you're on the hunt for that sort of elusive finish or that really unusual setup. Like we were talking earlier about the Vista Light kit that I've got at the minute. It's a 70s kit with a rail mount on it that they didn't catalogue, but they obviously made them, and having one, not necessarily makes it a more expensive kit. It makes it more unusual, which then means the next owner is going to go, well, I've got something really cool here. You know, your new drums.
Yeah.
How many wartime kits with wooden hoops and metal lugs are there? We've been lucky enough to have a couple on the website, but they just don't turn up.
Yeah.
So when they do, you just grab them with both hands and say, yeah, I need that in the store. I need it here.
Yeah. Yeah. Did it happen that you bought the drum set and actually kept it for yourself because you thought, I do not want to sell that?
There have been a few. There have been a few that it's been heartbreaking to sell. And, you know, things like this, when am I going to see another one? So, yeah, you kind of think, I'd love to keep it for myself. But then I'm not running a museum. It is still a retail shop. People often say to me, how do you choose what kits to buy?
Yeah.
I don't. If it comes up for sale, I buy it. You know, I won't choose between one or another. If there are two that I like, I'll buy them, knowing that there'll be two people out there that want them. But there have been some certain stuff. I've got a soft spot for George Way and Camco drums. You know, the history behind George Way and what he did and all the companies he worked for. He was an amazing guy. One of the first Camco kits I ever had in was a little 2012-14 original owner kit in Champagne Sparkle, one of my favourite finishes.
Yeah.
And it had never been played. There wasn't a mark on the hoop where the bass drum pedal had been. There was nothing. And a good friend of mine, a pro player, had approached me about buying it, and it was just at the point where I was going to take on CNC drums. So selling this kit that I lusted after and loved myself meant that I could then start working with CNC and get some of their incredible drums into the UK and into Europe. So you kind of go, you know, head, heart, I love this drum kit, I never want to sell it. Head says, well, if you sell that, you could probably find another one. And, you know, and you keep finding more drums and... Yeah, it's so much about the chase. It's much about the excitement of finding the drums. It's cool to have them here, and it's really nice when people see them and other people get excited about them as well. So yeah, it kind of there are things you think I'll never see another one. There are things you think I would love to have that, and then I think, well, for the 10 gigs I do a year when I'm playing Mustang Sally and Summer of '69, they're probably not worth me keeping hold of.
Yeah, but maybe they would.
One day, maybe.
It makes sense. It's just a very, it's just a different sound, which could also.
Yeah, it could be fun. But I mean, something like this with calf heads, trying to take it out to the dog and duck on a pub gig somewhere. Maybe not quite the right one.
Pouring beer all over it.
Yeah, I've got my little Ludwig gigging kit. That kind of does me.
Yeah. Do you have kind of preferences what you're going for sound-wise?
It's a really interesting one because I've been doing these feature videos on the website where I've had artists in here playing. I had a real shock. I've got probably about 2000, 2001 Ludwig Classic Maple kit. Vintage ambassador heads on it, quite low-tuned. It sounds really quite thuddy and vintage.
Yeah.
We sat here and did a load of videos. I think this kit was played by a friend of mine, Freddie Sheed. He did a couple of the CNC kits. He played another 3-ply Ludwig kit. That night, I then went out to gig my kit, and it was the most horrible sounding set of drums I'd ever heard. Because you get so much warmth and tone from these 3-ply shells. I then went straight to my 7-ply maple shells that I've tried to make sound vintage, and it just didn't work.
Not the same.
And I spent the whole night kind of just like, don't want to play the toms. It sounds horrible.
Yeah.
It's really strange. It's one of those things that you get so attuned to a certain sound, you get so used to a certain sound, and when I'm surrounded by it all the time, I then have to completely detach myself from that for my gigging kit as well. Yeah. I've listened to a couple of recordings back recently, and I've got one of the Ludwig Titanium Big Chiefs, the ones that Ron Dunnett made. There's 100 of them. Yeah. I found one, I bought it, I kind of kept it as a gigging snare drum. They retailed at nearly £2,000.
Wow. Yeah.
I got it on a very cheap deal. I found it somewhere.
Yeah.
And I gig it all the time, and you listen back to recordings, and it doesn't match the rest of the kicks. It's got this really bright, sharp, attacking rim shot sound to it, and then everything else is really thuddy and detuned. And it's like, well, maybe I should pull something else off the shelf and try that instead.
It's interesting because these old drums, they have this special touch. They are not perfect, but that's exactly what makes them perfect, kind of.
Guys with, because I'm into old cars as well, guys with old cars say there's character quirks. You know, you'll get in the car and it won't start every time, but part of the excitement is then working out why it doesn't.
Yeah.
So tuning the drums up, and you kind of go, well, yeah, if I don't tune that lug quite as tight as that one, I get this amazing sound, and it just balances out. It could be because the bearing edge on the drum's scalloped, or there's something wrong with it. Yeah. But you learn the personality of the drums. They're all handcrafted. That's the beauty of them. They're all handmade. Yeah. They've all had 30, 40 years plus to settle and to move. So some of them aren't going to be perfectly in round. Some of them are going to be just a little bit out of shape, but that adds to the charm of it, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah.
And guys that really appreciate it know how to work around it, know what to do with it. It's like, with this kit, with the calf heads on, it sounds incredible. You might find a modern head, there's a little bit of a dip here, it always has a wrinkle. You just don't know until you've got it, but then you'll find, especially watching how you tune drums today, you'll find a way around it and you'll find a way to make it work.
I like it to have to adapt a little to the
Yeah,
drum
exactly.
set.
You change your playing style, but you also will change your tuning and your setup style and everything else to go with it as well.
Yeah.
I mean, the way these have been tuned this afternoon, this was sounding like a floor tom earlier, and it was just so subby, it was just incredible.
Yeah, yeah.
And then the temperature changed slightly in here, the calf heads have adapted, and it sounds completely different. And you know that you'll get on a studio session and you'll have to play around with it and you'll have to tweak it between songs.
You have to make it possible, and it kind of does what the set wants, but
yeah, and that's the fun of it. That's
the fun of
that
it.
is the fun of owning these drums. It's not just straight out the case and.
Yeah, I'm so much looking forward to try it out in my studio back home.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was the most unique drum set you ever had?
There's some crazy stuff. I mean, just pointing at pattern C Vista lights, red and yellow swirl with 4 concert toms. That's quite unique. The chap that I'm selling that for had a 24, 13, 14, 16, 18 set as well. He had the 2 sets.
Okay.
It was a monster kit, and he's got a matching snare as well.
Wow. Yeah.
Some of that stuff, some of the finishes. I've had some of the different pattern Vista lights where they've got the straight panels of different colours around them. Those sort of candy cane things. They're quite cool. And then you turn up stuff, and not necessarily drum kits, but snare drums as well. I did a little article for the Mike Dolbear thing about wraps that weren't ever catalogued. So I had a Camco snare and it looked like champagne sparkle. When you took the heads off, it was peacock sparkle. It got reds and greens and blues in the sparkle, but it faded out quite a bit.
Yeah.
It's never listed in any catalogue, but I bought it from the original owner in Boston, who had the original receipt when he custom ordered it from the company. So it was made for him. It was a specially made drum for him in that finish. And these sort of drums, they turn up every now and then. You get these finishes. I had a chrome over wood. It was, again, a Camco drum. Chrome over wood, Oaklawn badge. Well, they did it in the 70s, but in Oaklawn period in the 60s, they didn't make that drum.
Yeah.
And yet again, we had the original build sheet with the drum. And you could see that it was made for that person. And it kind of looked like a prototype. When you took the heads off, the chrome wasn't quite flush with the bearing edge of the drum. It kind of looked a little bit wonky. But it was an original drum that was done as someone went in and said,
Custom
hey guys,
made.
can you make this for me?
Yeah.
And there was a lot more of that back in the 60s and the early 70s, that the companies weren't that big, that they didn't have a production line. They were still hand-making stuff, and they would do certain things for people. Even to the point that some kits turn up, especially we do a lot with Ludwig, you'll find kits that turn up with the badges on the wrong side of the drum. So it was made as if it was a 13-inch tom for a double tom kit, but it was sold so it was only a 1 tom, and the badge is facing the owner rather than facing the audience.
That's funny.
Something that wouldn't pass quality control today, but it's one of those little quirks that it's really cool. It's a really nice thing to have. We were talking about that Blue Oyster kit that's behind the camera earlier. It's a clear maple shell, so it's the start of the sort of it's a late 68 kit, so it's that start of the sort of early 70s maple clear interior shells rather than the painted mahogany ones. But it's in one of the early 60s finishes, Blue Oyster finish, and it's just kind of that crossover, that slightly quirky side of things, rather than your run-of-the-mill red sparkles, blue sparkles all the time. And just
that's
having
the catalogue and that's it, and there's nothing else.
this, wooden hoops and metal lugs. It's that whole kind of not quite a rolling bomber, but certainly a more giggable kit than a rolling bomber. It's having those little quirks, those little bits and pieces. Having stuff that comes through with the original heads on, that always excites me.
Amazing. It's 80 years old.
And they don't look like they've been hardly played. They've got so much life left in them. They feel great to play. They feel great to touch and to tune. It's having that sort of stuff. When you get something out of the box and it's almost box fresh. It looks like it's just come from the factory. Drums with like dealer heads and dealer badges and things like that on them, where you know a bit of the history of where it's come from. It just, they're the things that really excite me. They're the things that, more so than really rare drums, I've had. A couple of the Birdland Gretsch Cadillac Green with gold hardware. I've had a couple of the kits here. They're real collector's items. They're real. There's only, they think, 13 known of out of 50 ever made. But they're not necessarily as expensive, as exciting to me as original synthetic head on a 50s drum. So one of the first synthetic heads that's come out, and you just think, well, this is how this drum's lived its life. Never quite sure who's played it unless you've bought it from the original family, but you know that someone's used this for the last 50 years and that's how they've had it and that's how they've played it. And it just kind of, that's the stuff that excites me, the history
Brings
behind
a lot of history with it, yeah. One last question. You are going to Chicago, I think, next week or next month?
Next month, May, to the Chicago Vintage Drum Show.
Again, so it's
Again,
been really
second year,
yeah.
Yeah, because you flew in the day I landed.
Yeah, it's great.
And we did a blurry-eyed drum testing last year, yeah.
Awesome. Hey, I would love to go there. So great to.
It is it's an amazing show. Yeah. There's a lot of guys there's a lot of collectors over there. Guys like Joe Meckler that has a collection of rolling bombers and Leedy Victorious. There's all these lovely wartime kits with that he's beautifully restored. There's those sort of guys, and you don't see that stuff.
Can you buy everything there? Or is just an exhibition as
well?
There
are some guys that are just there displaying. There are guys doing clinics there.
Okay.
There's a cymbalsmith from the UK, a guy called Matt Newland, who goes over and shows every year because he makes orchestral tam-tams, gongs, triangles. He's a cymbalsmith, he makes cymbals. So he goes over and displays every year. He gets business there. I think we spent about $25,000 at the show last year. Wow. I end up filling most of the container with drums from the show. So it's a great place to go and meet guys. I'm not sure you'll necessarily always get the most amazing deal. You're never going to find something that people don't realise what it's worth. Those guys always know what they've got. But there's like-minded guys. It's just rooms full of drummers geeking out over drum gear. Yeah. So it's kind of cool for that side of things.
It is, yeah.
And it's nice. It's a nice social hang with the guys that I deal with on Messenger or on through emails all the time. To actually spend a couple of days in their time zone and go out and have a meal and say, thanks for sorting this out for me. Thanks for finding that. And
it's cool.
It's a great thing. It's a nice social hang, as they say.
Cool. I'm really curious what's coming in June.
We've got two containers. One that's about to land at the moment. There's one that left Miami on the 7th of March. And then the stuff that we buy at Chicago will be in the next container after that. So there's still a lot of stuff. And people are always baffled that I can never remember what's in a container. But you can imagine I buy kits 2-3 months in advance that then make it to the boat and then spend another 4 to 6 weeks getting here. Sometimes you open a box and go, oh, I forgot that. The 50s Gretsch round badge over there, I completely forgot I'd bought that. Until I opened the boxes and went, oh, there's a nice Gretsch snare drum there.
It's like Christmas.
Oh, there's a whole kit. Yeah. So I try and, on the website there is a coming soon list, and I try and list all the vintage stuff that's coming in.
Okay.
Some of it doesn't maybe make the first container and there's not enough space, so it kind of gets pushed on and you kind of lose track a little bit. But I'm quite clued up on what's coming, because if I don't write it down, I will forget. Yeah. And because we're always trying to source stuff for people, we get people, oh, can you find me a 26-inch Champagne Sparkle bass drum? Can you find me a Radio King? Can you find me this? So we're always trying to source stuff for people as well. And sometimes we'll buy things not necessarily on the hope that it'll be the right one, but if you said to me you wanted a Radio King kit and we found 2 or 3 for sale, we'd buy them all so you had a choice.
Awesome.
And so then there's a couple of kits that are left over as overspill that we won't necessarily announce on the website straight away. So yeah, there's always those sort of things coming through.
Coolest thing that you can actually sit here and try 5 different Radio King snares. I mean, where else can you do that? Actually,
this is
I don't know
anywhere else. That was the whole idea. That was the whole business plan, to give people a choice of vintage gear and just to have the best examples you can. Try and keep them at a sensible budget, keep them at a sensible price, and make it fun for people as well.
Cool. Thanks so much for your time.
Absolute pleasure.
Awesome.
It's been great. It's been fantastic.